Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, which according to Anthropic's Claude AI, when it comes to the food industry specifically, we are widely regarded, this is a quote, as a top Canadian food industry podcast. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
I didn't know that. Wow, I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our guest of the show is Brent. Brent Cater, president and owner of Cardinal Meats, proudly marking its 60th anniversary this year, celebrating 6 decades of growth, innovation, high-quality products. Cardinal Meats has grown from a regional processor into a nationally respected supplier, best known for its signature beef burgers, fully cooked products that have become staples in Canada and in the Canadian restaurants and households. Sylvain, we don't talk to a lot of guests with a 60-year family-operated history of success and innovation. I was particularly impressed by their dedication to industry-wide food safety as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's very rare that you run into a company wanting to influence policy. And that's really Cardinal Meats. And so it's been great. I've actually worked with them when I was in Guelph many years ago. And it's a well-regarded, well-respected company. So I was glad that Brent was able to actually join us on our show today.
All right. Well, let's start the show. Let's talk about get an update on Iran every day, something a little bit different. But what are you seeing in terms of commodity price? Of course, our focus is on less about the politics and the conflict, but more about its impact, downstream impact on global food prices in Canada. What are you seeing?
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole story is around the Strait of Hormuz and how much traffic we're seeing. There is some traffic going through, but very little. I would say friendly traffic is going through. The Chinese, Sri Lankans, Indians, things like that. But critically, I mean, the bottleneck is actually quite immense. And so we've been watching commodity prices. Still not a story yet. Some commodities are up maybe 5% since February 28th when attacks started. Mm-hmm. So it's not like Ukraine, really. But what's like Ukraine are fertilizers. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, fertilizer prices are actually skyrocketing because of the situation affecting urea, sulfur. So, I mean, these products should be on a boat coming here, and they are not. And so we are likely expecting markets to believe that yields will be impacted this year. And when yields are impacted, guess what happens to commodity prices? They go up. And so I think it's a matter of time before we start seeing wheat and soy and other products, other commodities go up in price. But really right now, the big story is energy, with oil going up and down and up and down. And my goodness, I must say, as an academic, my job is to try to understand, but I do not understand the White House right now for two reasons. One, it's trying to downplay the issue of affordability, saying that the uncertainty is not understanding, or people who are uncertain about the issue don't understand is actually what at play. We're winning, blah, blah, blah. Well, the problem is that when oil prices go up and down, transport companies, anyone involved in logistics will eyeball energy costs. So they'll charge as much as possible. So no matter what happens to energy costs, everyone's going to have to pay for it, including, well, you and I at the grocery store. And so that's one thing that I really am very concerned about right now, the politicization of affordability by the White House. And the other thing, of course, is, well, President Trump basically attacked Iran on February 28th without really telling anyone. And now he's seeking help to secure the Strait of Hormuz. And nobody's budging. Nobody wants to help. Well, duh, of course. But
Yeah,
what I find it very interesting, Michael, right now, is that China has not canceled the summit at the end of the month. That is really, to me, very interesting, because we all know that if there's one country that has been hurt by attacks in Iran, it's China.
A little bit, right? It's not. Trump continues to say they get most of their oil from Iran. That's not true. They get about 50%. The rest that comes from Russia.
Now, 50% is a lot. Really, the whole idea was to hurt China, and China is still going ahead with the summit. If one party would have canceled by now, it would have been China, as far as I'm concerned. But they have not canceled, which is interesting. So I do hope something will get resolved, something will advance, because there's always a chance that the conflict can end. And if it does end early, then perhaps we'll save the world from the worst scenario, which is, again, exactly what we saw with Ukraine a few years ago, with inflation rates above, like, north of 10% in many, many countries, including Canada. And we saw what happened. That's hurtful for a lot of people. But I am certainly hopeful that at some point something will get resolved. If there's anything right now that can be resolved, it would be between China and the United States, as far as I'm concerned, because the Middle East is so complicated. I mean, it's so complicated. You can't just have Israel and the U.S., Israel motivating the U.S. to attack Iran, and here we are. I mean, there's so much going on in Iran, and you can't just remove and kill a supreme leader and move on. It's not like Venezuela, for example.
Let's talk about the 1-year anniversary of the Carney Liberals being in power. I say the Carney Liberals because it's mostly the same cast of characters, except for Carney. Yeah. Now, you produced some graphs around purchasing power, comparing the Conservative before, under Harper, for example, to the Trudeau and now the Carney years. Now, I noticed in the chart, of course, there was a big spike from COVID. Certainly, there was an exogenous shock you just talked about in our last segment, with a second one with the Ukraine war. So what were your conclusions, kind of looking at it through that lens?
Well, so often we talk about food prices, and we do talk about food affordability. Well, we never talk about wages, how wages are going. Like, are they increasing? And this week we were fortunate enough to actually see both the CPI and wages last Friday. And nobody really talked about this. And of course, I did a deep dive into that data that was published on Friday. And wages are up 4.2% in Canada in last year. So when people are saying wages are keeping up, well, they're not keeping up with food prices because, as you know, food inflation is now below 2% at 1.8%. So it's not that bad. So wages are supporting that inflation impact, or supporting households to absorb that impact. But when it comes to food prices, food inflation has been well above 5% for a while now. So when people show up at the grocery store, that's why they don't feel that they're getting ahead. They just can't, because they see all these prices going on. Even bananas are up 8.2% year to year. Bananas were immune to food inflation forever, and not anymore. So and of course, the meat counter is a disaster right now. Beef up 13.9%. Chicken, the steadiest she goes commodity, 9.2%, and pork 9%. So for Easter, I've been looking at ham prices. There's just no way you can get a deal unless you wait at the very last minute. You're going to pay $2.50, $3 a pound probably for ham this year compared to last year. That's an extra 5-7%. So meat prices are really just out of whack. So that's probably why people feel that they're being left behind, just because wages are moving up and not as much. But when you look at the purchasing power of a consumer, conservatives versus liberals, I mean, under the Liberals since 2015, it hasn't been that bad compared to the Conservatives. So our purchasing power under the Conservatives from 2006 to 2015 went up about 13.9%. Okay. Under the Liberals, our buying power actually did go up by 9%. The problem with the Liberals is that on the one side, they had to deal with a lot of major geopolitical shocks, like COVID, Ukraine, and now Iran. And really, it has nothing to do with Ottawa, really. But they did actually come up with a lot of policies that actually made prices even less stable, like the GST holiday, for example, CERB, some of the handouts, of course, the grocery rebates and things like that. So that really basically got our purchasing power less stable. And I think that's probably why people feel more vulnerable. So it's not about our buying power being lessened, it's our buying power being uncertain and unstable the last decade or so.
Since we're on and talking a little bit about politics on the 1 year anniversary, Professor, if you would rank the Liberals under Carney, their progress so far. I mean, if you look at the polls, Canadians are only getting more happy with what the Liberals are doing, and there's a bigger delta between who would be the best prime minister, with Carney being in a strong lead. Now, when you look overall of what's happened, how do you assess, can you give them a grade? I mean, we've talked about good things for Saskatchewan vis-a-vis China. There's other negative things. Overall, what grade do you give them so far?
So as an academic, as a professor, typically you would have a scoring grid and criteria to actually assess a government. And when
a rubric, you'd call it a rubric, wouldn't you?
A rubric, exactly. And if the rubric was based on what was promised, a year ago, I would say, let's defer the exam, basically, because we haven't really.
What have we seen, right? Well, we've seen some stuff, right? Better relations with India, better relations with China.
Well, yeah, from a food perspective, I'd say there's only been one mistake, really, and I think it's the grocery rebate. I like $14 billion with money we don't have.
I remember back a couple of episodes when we talked about you weren't entirely negative. In fact, you were kind of neutral to slightly positive was my impression about that initiative. But as your mind turned, or have you changed your mind?
No, well, it's hard to be against a policy that will actually grant money to people who need it. That's the thing. And it is targeted. That's really why I think I gave some credit to Ottawa for doing this, but at the same time, and it won't necessarily impact inflation as far as it's $14 billion. The problem is that the deficit is becoming a problem. I haven't really changed my mind. It's just, I do think it was not necessary. And but I do think that from a trade perspective, there's been some progress in India, in China, and in particular. And I know that in Australia and in different places, I think there's also been some progress around trades. And so that's certainly a good thing. And so that's certainly a gain from. And of course, Mark Carney understands economics better than anyone else. It's just, I think right now, his biggest problem is that he's dealing with a terrible legacy under Trudeau. And he knows that. I mean, he's trying to undo a lot of things that Trudeau did. And he recognizes that there were some issues, but he's just trying to entangle many of them. And frankly, right now, the industrial carbon tax, I believe, is just bad policy for the food industry. Now, there's a columnist in the Toronto Star that actually claimed that I was anti-carbon tax. I'm not anti-carbon tax at all. I've always been concerned about how the carbon tax impacts our agri-food sector's competitiveness. That's it. Should polluters pay? Absolutely. I do believe that. But the carbon tax in food is different. It's a totally different beast because of margins and because of risks when producing food. And so I believe we need to approach this very differently. And there's an increase coming up on April 1st. And even though diesel emissions are exempt now, the food industry is still exposed to these increases around the periphery of the supply chain, forcing farmers, manufacturers, distributors to pay more for whatever inputs they need. And that's putting pressure on the entire food supply chain, which is why I've always said, you know what, maybe it's time to pause this thing for a while, especially in light of what's going on in Iran.
Well, let's get into this a little bit more. So I'm a big fan, as you know, of the Curse of Politics podcast, probably one of the most influential Canadian podcasts on politics. And the Canadian Climate Institute is spending our tax dollars and other money to run an ad on that podcast that basically
don't you find it interesting that every time me or someone else comes out, criticizes the carbon tax to a certain extent successfully, all of a sudden you see an open letter, you see a press release by the Canadian Climate Institute saying, you know what, the carbon tax is not impacting food affordability or food prices in Canada.
Well, the ad read by David Hurley doesn't call you out specifically. Of course, they say some people. They might as well say some people named Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, a professor at Dalhousie University. Now, they say their research says that, let me see what it says, no impact on consumer prices. The Institute modeling shows that industrial carbon pricing has no meaningful impact on the price of gasoline or groceries. And farmers do not pay this specific tax. So there's a lot of little hedge words here. Virtually no costs are passed through the supply chain to the grocery store. So we know the funding to this institute comes from the federal government and a cast of other characters. Talk more about your perspective around this, and particularly since they're saying, well, listen, we got research that said, there's no impact.
Well, I mean, their model is based on the Navius method. The Navius method is a throughput model. So, for example, they'll look at the price of diesel, and if the price of diesel goes up, then it flows through equally throughout the supply chain. That's where I have a problem, because you see, the carbon tax is like throwing a rock onto a lake. Like if you throw a rock onto a lake, you'll see waves. Once the rock touches the water, you'll see waves, circles of waves. And that circle amplifies, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets to shore. That's the carbon tax. And that's the part that most people don't see. That's the invisible part. So as soon as you actually tax a component of the system, it basically puts pressure on other components to adapt and to increase prices accordingly. And that's what Navius does not do. And that's why the Climate Institute is wrong in simplifying the issue of affordability and how the carbon tax is impacting food prices. It doesn't look at machinery. It doesn't look at fertilizer. It doesn't look at packaging. It doesn't look at anything around the food supply chain that supports the food supply chain. And that's why I think it's such a linear approach that it's dangerous, really. And the worst is that in 2018, Ottawa never bothered to calculate, to evaluate any of this stuff. So since 2018, they've been trying desperately to justify everything to the Canadian public, saying that the carbon tax is a non-issue. But it is an issue, and I think we need to have a debate on this issue. The Conservatives have been trying to have a debate on this issue. I've been trying to have a debate on this issue, the methodologies that are being used, and we've actually published 3 papers about this, 3 papers in the last 2 years in peer-reviewed journals. And those who actually oppose us would publish in journals like the Canadian Journal of Agricultural Economics. And that is an incestuous community of about 3 to 5 economists publishing in the same journal over and over and over again. So they all know each other. And this is what we call an incestuous academic community. They cite each other out to amplify the effects and influence of some of these papers, like Trevor Tombe, for example. Now, Trevor Tombe is a good economist, but I think he was caught up into this carbon tax political storm, and he's been forced to justify that the carbon tax is not impacting food prices, but it does. I mean, we have to really somberly look at what's happening around the world. That's why I always look at the G7. I mean, Canada is in trouble, and we need to understand why.
I don't feel there's much momentum behind pausing this industrial carbon tax.
Well, I mean, there's not much momentum because I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't think that media, every time I talk to journalists about the carbon tax, they have no clue what I'm talking about because they think it's gone. Mm-hmm. I bet you right now, Michael, 90% of Canadians think it's gone because Carney actually, yesterday morning, I had a live interview on TV in Quebec, and a very well-known former politician in Quebec basically told me, well, Sylvain, the carbon tax is gone. And I said, no, it's not. First of all, the consumer carbon tax is not gone. It was brought down to 0.
Okay.
It is still not. The policy is still there. The industrial tax is still there, and for food in particular. And I do think that this is a bit of an issue for the food industry because these are extra costs affecting a low margin environment.
Well, interesting. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things wrapped up in this. Oh, I wanted to mention as well, I wanted to get your thoughts on, I saw the government did, I think, a good thing by changing the rules around rural temporary foreign workers. Because we've been, I remember even back to our discussion with the folks at the Mushroom Canada, they were saying, listen, you're taking a big sledgehammer to a program that needs a scalpel. Seems like that's a good move by the government, yeah?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good move. I think they read the room correctly, which is good. Yeah, absolutely. So make sure we actually save and support farmers, but at the same time, if you're running a McDonald's, it's time to move on. In fact, actually this morning, McDonald's Canada was announcing that it's looking for 2,000 new employees only for the province of Quebec.
Well, I mean, youth unemployment's at 14%, so I think I know where they can go find them, theoretically.
Listen, if you're running a restaurant in an urban setting, I say hire Canadians. There's plenty of youth looking for jobs.
One last thing in here in the restaurant area before we get to our interview with Cardinal Meats. Research out actually is done by H&R Block, because I think there's a taxation issue hooked to it. 67% of Canadians want to end tipping as we know it. I note the survey doesn't ask the question, would you accept that bill going up? You know, what do we call it? Hospitality included.
Exactly, yeah.
We've talked about hospitality. It's just going to disappear. Yeah, it's just going to disappear. But interestingly, I read the survey, and sure enough, 91% said that there should be less tipping and employers should cover the full cost of the wages. So what people are saying is they think that the restaurateurs are getting rich by not paying their employees and forcing that down. Now, I think this tipping culture has the tipping culture reached a tipping point?
I don't know. My sense is that you do have an opinion on this. First of all, I must say, when the Toronto Star called me yesterday about this survey, I didn't believe it. Did you?
Well, it's nonsense because you're not asking about the trade-off. It's kind of like saying, well, exactly. Do you want a bigger military? Sure.
Like we survey
You're going to spend an
Canadians.
extra hour in the waiting room at a hospital. Do you want, so I don't think the trade-offs
we surveyed Canadians 2 years ago asking that exact same question.
Yeah.
And 25.7% of Canadians actually were willing to say, let's get rid of tipping and add the extra costs on menu prices. It's about a quarter of Canadians. Most Canadians actually appreciate the power of assessing someone's performance in real time in a restaurant. That's the tipping culture that we have in Canada. So I've always believed this is a debate we need to have in Canada. I've actually said that to Restaurants Canada. We talked about it last week with some folks on the floor at the RC show. I don't know. Like I do think that right now there's a lot of things going on. Many patrons believe that when being asked to tip, they're providing a wage subsidy. Sometimes tip creep is annoying people. You're being asked to tip when you're getting coffee at the counter, for example. You're getting all your stuff for yourself. So the context is certainly not warranting any tips. Remember last week when we were at the RC show and spoke to Vince from Circana, and we did talk about tipping when we announced that the net number of restaurants would drop by 4,000 in 2026. A lot of people told us, well, that's good riddance because tipping made me sick and I'm not going back to restaurants. And I said, wow, tipping is, I think tipping is a debate that got away from the industry. I do think that the industry should tackle that on. I mean, today I was actually on a radio show. Restaurants Canada was invited to be part of the show because they wanted to debate on this issue, and they were a no-show.
Well, they don't like talking about this. Yeah,
no, they don't want to talk about it.
No,
they don't, and I think they should.
All right. Well, listen. Let's leave it there. I don't see any change out of this at all. I do. Oh, one follow-up question.
I agree. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. One follow-up question. Now, there is talk in America. There's no policy or government rules yet about making tipping tax exempt. They're floated that out as an idea. It's very popular with some. I mean, it said many economists say it would just distort the economics. Any sense of that as a good thing to do? Make tips tax exempt so that people who are earning those wages can benefit from that.
Well, I think they should be exempt. Absolutely. Now, the province of Quebec actually has a rule. There's a certain percentage. Over that percentage, you're taxed. And so it depends on the province, really. But tipping is a precious thing. I mean, it really is a big piece of how people make their money. So personally, I don't think it should be taxed, but each province will actually have a different approach to tipping for sure.
Okay, so make it tax exempt and lower it. There you go. There's a two-point platform there that could work, right?
There you go.
There you go. Look at that. We're solving problems here. We're solving problems. The world's problems here on the Food Professor podcast. Let's get to our interview with Brent Cater from Cardinal Meats. Brent, welcome to the Food Professor podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing just awesome.
Well, good fantastic. Stuff. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, a familiar name to me. I mean, I love your product and great branding, and I got lots of questions for you. You're celebrating a bit of an anniversary as well, too, right?
Tremendous one. Yeah, 60 years as Cardinal Meat Specialist. And it's kind of fun because we celebrated 100 years as Cater in the meat industry last year, and we got 60 years as Cardinal Meat Specialist this year.
Well, Sylvain, we don't get a lot of brands that have that kind of tenure, right? Right, Sylvain?
No. Oh, no. I mean, it's a tremendous feat to celebrate 60 years, 100 years. I mean, I think Highliner was the last one we had that was over 100 years.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Brent, tell us all about, obviously Sylvain and I know your business a little bit, but let's not assume everybody else does. So talk about Cardinal Meat Specialist, your scope scale, how you trade, your wholesale, what makes you different and what makes you special.
Fantastic. Well, Cardinal, it is my family business. We're Canada's largest burger producer and a world leader in innovative sous vide cooking. That's kind of the fundamentals of the background on what we do for customers. Proudly Canadian. I guess I'm 1/5 generation Canadian, and we support both the retail, like grocery store type businesses and the ones like Costco, and then the food service restaurants. And we also look after industrial accounts, people who buy our products and then make them into other products. I might take a ground beef crumble and make it into a lasagna, that kind of thing. It's like what makes us special. You know, and there's the talent on the team, without a doubt. And one of the great things about the longevity is the long-term staff that we have. They really focus on helping customers with their unique needs, innovative solutions, and to whatever customers need. It could be cost effectiveness or capacity, somebody who can actually respond to the scale of their needs, flavor of a product. You know, you want a phenomenal flavor in anything you're going to eat, obviously, or things like labor savings. We have what we refer to as a sous chef based on our sous vide capabilities, and it plays a huge role in making home meals more convenient in restaurants. It gives them all sorts of advantages, including consistency that staff's hard to find nowadays. So we can make a big difference in the restaurant trade.
And what part of Canada are you based in?
We're in Ontario. We've always been Ontario, although we've moved around the area. Our first plant was in Mississauga, then another one in Mississauga, and then we're now in Brampton.
Oh, I see. And where do you trade? Do you trade outside of Canada? Do you do any business internationally?
No, not now. Over time, we've done bits and pieces into the States, but we're really focused on the Canadian market, coast to coast, with everything from the very major players, the brands through to the independent mom and pops. And we really started our business as looking after mom and pop restaurants, and that grew to small chains, and then now into some of the biggest names in the country.
So if I get my math right, the business started around 1966. And could you speak to how I think it was your dad, Ralph, right, started it?
Yeah.
How do you think the philosophy has changed? I mean, we talked to a lot of brands and leaders like yourself, and sometimes there's this core philosophy that's been with them forever. And sometimes that's taking care of people, or, we're only going to do the certain following things. But at the same time, it's a dynamic environment and you can't get stuck in the past. So how do you square that circle? How's the philosophy? What's changed and what's stayed the same?
Well, our philosophy has always been grounded in integrity. It was written a lot of years ago. Company started in 66, and around 1970, my father actually crafted out what is there today, and it stayed as fundamental. There's serving customer needs is number one. Attracting and retaining top talent And then they're the execution through a championship team in the way that we do things. We're not about, it's always nice to have an individual contributor who's got a lot of talent, but it's the teamwork and crosswork between departments that really makes the difference in our philosophy. From when my grandfather started us in meats and my dad started Cardinal, we've evolved a lot, and it's evolved and changed a lot because homeowners and restaurants' needs have changed. But these three pillars of our philosophy, they've been steadfast. They're the core.
Your company has innovated quite a bit over the last few decades. So Cardinal was the first to introduce HACCP, multi-protein designations, DNA lab testing, N60 protocols, natural texture forming burgers, safe sous vide.
This is a science.
I mean,
it's a science.
The list goes on. Oh yeah, it's just the list goes on. I mean, for people outside the meat industry, they may not appreciate this, but it's a lot. It's a slew of innovation right there, and I suspect that the market has actually appreciated this over the last several years. Do you feel that innovation is very much at the core of what Cardinal Meats is all about?
Absolutely, and that's what our customers come back to us. You mentioned HACCP, hazard analysis, critical control points, and most consumers wouldn't even know the term, but it was it was a conceived way to keep astronauts safe in space because you couldn't have somebody get sick in space, and we adopted immediately as the thought and the position for the industry to adopt those same principles across all food production. We're the first protein processor across hundreds of items and multiple species, which is definitely a proud moment to be certified in HACCP. And that's certainly progressed over time, advanced, and for both ourselves and the industry. And there's things about looking after the industry that Cardinal gets very involved in, and that's part of our innovation and how we go about things. Like even just this morning, I went with the University of Guelph, and they've helped us with science and innovation solutions. And here they are, Canada's lead agricultural university, and they're really struggling because funding into the universities has created a real challenge. Well, it's the type of thing Cardinal gets involved in. How are we going to play a role and help advocate for private and government money to support it? So it's not only just innovation in, let's say, product, but it might be a solution for the industry that really makes a difference. And I guess to your question, when I reflect and think about innovation, was it intentional? Is it? Yes, it's. I'd have to say that customer needs have driven the innovation, and that's certainly opened up marketplace opportunities for us. We don't really produce any base commodities. As much as we're in burgers, if it's same product that anybody else can make, it's really not our driving space. We're out there trying to provide something innovative that our customers can make more money on and create a distinction for them in the market. And that's the space in the meat industry. And I say meat, although we're the largest veggie burger producer in the country, and we're cooking things like rice. So we've been able to take our technologies across a whole spectrum of possibilities.
The mixture between vegetarian burgers, I guess, or vegan burgers versus livestock, is that a balance that you're having a hard time reconciling with, or is that something that came naturally?
Well, it's interesting that completely comfortable with it. It was interesting. We were the first people to take a veggie burger in Canada to one of the national chains, and that was Harvey's, and enabled them into that space. And then further on,
I did not know that. Wow, that's great. What year was that?
And that's going back, I'm gonna guess, but about 23 years. Like they were the very first that really, while everybody was working in that space, and it's still a small part of the business, and that it certainly serves purpose. There are certainly consumers that have that preference, and we're there to look after customer needs, and it's big big segment in its own right. It's growing quickly. It got a little overblown with things like Beyond and Impossible, and that's crashed. But the base vegetarian business and burgers continues to grow. It continues to be a need in the country, and it's serving different purposes and diets in different communities.
I'm glad that you were meeting at Guelph and that you actually kind of take care of several stakeholders in the science space. I used to be at Guelph and I have a good friend in food science, Keith Warner. I'm not sure if you were meeting with him, but he's been a great. Yeah, absolutely. And so, universities are struggling. Everyone is struggling, really. So it's always nice to see a partner like Cardinal stepping up and helping out. And you've also been involved with the regulators, the CFIA, as well as in a leadership role with E. coli, weren't you?
Absolutely. In ground meat, what a lot of consumers don't understand is that the outside of meat is the area that could get a risk pathogen on it. So when you grind the product, you take a potential pathogen and put it in the middle. So that's why you need to cook a burger to 160 Fahrenheit or 71 Celsius. It's just to eliminate any potential cross-contamination risk that could happen. In today's world, it's now moved down to about 1 in 10 million as a risk, and then easily killed with cooking. But when you go back to Jack in the Box incidences that happened years ago, I was involved in the task force with the United States Department of Agriculture and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to look at and redesign what the industry was doing. And we did that. And
the CFIA was just a few years old at the time.
Well, CFIA certainly in this space was struggling and really needed to draw on industry, the trade associations, and the science communities. It takes constant work with customers because they forget about food safety. They take it as a given. The reality is, I don't care if it's in car manufacturing or food. It's not just a table stake. It's something you got to be working at all the time. I'd suggest we spend a disproportionate time versus others in the industry educating customers, government agencies, and that, because food safety is not a competition. It's something that the world needs, that the industry needs, and then being able to partner up with education institutes like the University of Guelph helps us, and it helps our customers, just makes food safer. And that's a huge part of what we're committed to.
If you think it's a fascinating conversation, because I love the talking about this investment behind the scenes, and it gets me to think about how you get your return on your investment on that. I mean, in other words, food safety, by many consumers would consider that table stakes. But as you invest in it, how do you turn that into a differentiator with your client? Like, it's not like you can walk into a retailer and say, hey, guess what? Unlike those other burgers, we're safe, because you're all pretty safe, right? So
we don't kill people; they kill people.
I'm overstating the point, but it's not like your sales team can go in and go, "We're a safe burger." It's kind of table stakes. But how do you turn that into a differentiator? Because you're clearly investing in leading edge thinking around it.
I guess by being prominent in it and being open to speaking about it is step one, and educating and constantly re-educating customers and consumers on what are the elements of food safety, how do they play, and when you do that enough times, you start to become the company that people turn to when they have challenges or they're fearful. They're going to protect their brand, and they're going to turn to a company that's going to be proactive in that way. We put in a DNA lab years ago, and it was a validation of the latest technologies available for testing. And with it, we discovered a lot. We learned a lot about products and safety.
Yeah.
And it was huge. The industry actually was very upset with us when we put it in. They were concerned we're going to find concerns and there's going to be too much awareness, and that's going to cause something for the industry. And we took the learnings that we got from it, turned it into approaches like HACCP, which is all based on find an identified hazard, do whatever you can do to eliminate or minimize the risk. And that involved us working with our suppliers, the harvesters and the agriculture industry, and working jointly with them to figure out ways in order to eliminate risks. And those are the type of steps that Cardinal has become famous for. And I think why a lot of the biggest brands turn to us, because they trust us. They trust us because we've led these things. We didn't say we're safe. We made industry-changing efforts to improve it. For everybody, not just for Cardinal, for everybody.
When you think of safety, you think of Cardinal. Basically, it's kind of like could be the slogan, and up on the boardroom. Now, I have a quick question. You just got me thinking about where you source your proteins from. Is it largely Canadian? I suppose in the veggie product, there's some international components, but beef right now is going through a moment, to say the least.
To say the least.
Where do you source your product from? And Sylvain and I have talked about ungraded meat on the shelves from Mexico, for example, which we assume is safe, but just ungraded. How do you think about that?
We source from all over the world. We're huge supporters of the Canadian industry in our veggie burgers and our beef burgers. Yet there's one, to meet the needs creating a great hamburger. You're looking for the most consistent lean combined with just the right amount of fats that have all that flavor. If you eat a great steak, you're looking for that marbling throughout. And in a burger, we can create it. We always come to Canada first. Sometimes we can't look after all the needs. And we don't buy by country. We buy by facility. Not all meat producers are created equal. So we do extensive validation work on any supply from anywhere in the world to ensure that it's living up to standards that exceed what I love what the CFIA does and the government regulatory bodies. That said, not all plants are created equal, and they can't be there for everything. It has to be facilities that have that integrity that I mentioned before. And we spend a lot of time on that. And countries like Australia and New Zealand are huge supporters of lean meat into the burger world. And you couple that with the more staking cattle that are grown in Canada, and you end up with an incredible burger.
Last question for me, and then I'm going to throw the mic back to Sylvain. Fun fact for you. Your name came up in my early days of e-commerce. I was at Hudson's Bay, and I was working with a guy named David Poirier. You may or may not remember David. And he said, hey, I got these guys at Cardinal, and you're doing e-commerce. Should they do e-commerce? And just fast forward, I live not too far away from actually where your outlet store was here in Mississauga. Talk about, very well established in retail and food service. Is there a world of where you see a DTC, a direct-to-consumer element, or are you kind of fixed? I don't see anything on your site that says you even have an outlet store. So talk about that for just a few minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually started our retail outlet years ago, and it was attached to our Stanfield Road facility, and it did wonderful things. In fact, what it did, it allowed us to understand consumers because we were much more focused on the food service restaurant industry. It was a summer school project for me to get it going, and it ended up being quite iconic. People are driving from all over Greater Toronto area to buy product. Over time, quite frankly, two things happened. One, we were growing fast enough that we needed the space, and we turned into a lunchroom for our staff. Why that made sense was we had entered so many products into grocery retail, some under our name and a lot under other people's brands, that we didn't want to compete with ourselves, and we didn't want to compete with our customers. So we decided to move out of that space. We support that space now with players who are doing home meal solutions or kits and whatnot through our what we call our industrial end. We'll make cooked beef strips or diced beef or shredded chicken that is food safe because of our sous vide capabilities. And then they can put that into different kits and formats for that direct-to-consumer setup. And I see, at least for the foreseeable future, that's going to be the route that we'll be supporting the most.
Your father Ralph really made his mark in the industry for many decades. Passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. But you've been around too for a very long time.
40 years.
40 years
in Cardinal Meats.
So I guess
a little bit of experience.
Out of 40 years, could you tell us like 2 or 3 moments, decisions, you've made or you've made with your dad over the years that really has made a difference for your company and the industry overall? Because I mean, Cardinal is way beyond just the company itself. You're very influential across the board.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's been those telltale moments that make a difference. No doubt, some of the efforts, things that we've done when it comes to food safety and leadership, one set us apart, but it allowed customer intimacy and an understanding to help. So that'd be huge. I would think that we actually were the very first people in North America who could do sous vide cooking on a commercial scale sometime over 30 years ago. And that's because we eliminated the food safety risks that came with sous vide. And a lot of people aren't fully aware of the risks of things like Clostridium perfringens and botulitum. And we found a way to make sous vide cooking safe across the board and now apply it to hundreds of products. And by eliminating that, we created products that were more cost effective and just tasted fantastic. So people came to us for those sous vide products. And then that would be huge. Over time, people come to us for sous vide products now, not only for those reasons, it just tastes great, but it also safer product, longer shelf lives, no preservatives, massive value add in that, which allows restaurants to speed of service, people at home to eliminate need for, let's say, going to a restaurant, because we've done the sous chef work for them. So things like that have definitely been iconic changes. One would be what we call natural texture forming in burgers, where it's funny, when you see in the industry, what do people want? They want something that cooks fast, has the greatest level of food safety, and they don't want a burger that's going to shrink away to nothing on a plate. And we found a way in forming burgers that led to a premium product, less processed, and it makes up 85-90% of the burgers we sell today. And it enabled us in stuffed burgers. We're the only people in the world that can make a stuffed burger that doesn't explode. It's funny, but you put cheese in the middle of a burger and heat it up, it's going to explode on you. So
I know.
So I think bringing food science and safety for customers, huge differentiator, and our DNA lab was kind of the start of that in a most meaningful way. Finding this technology and then commercializing it on large scale so we can look after consumers. Getting in, we mentioned the veggie burgers before, being the first to go in there in scale and be able to bring that for the consumer that was after that, and being the first in sous vide. They'd be the ones I think that stand out to me as the big innovations that move the company in the most material way over the years.
I guess as CEO, my last question before I throw it back to Michael is, do you have any thoughts about automation and AI? Obviously, lots of talks. I mean, with most of our guests, we do talk about AI. It's the big topic these days. Do you have any thoughts on how automation and AI can and will influence your business over the next decade or so?
When it comes to automation, I'm going to say similarly to the way it has in the past, and that is as technology's caught up to enable more cost-effective, more food safe, better packaging technology options, those sort of things, we're going to embrace them first. And we've done a lot of firsts in that. And there's still a lot of things with food that really matter when the person on the line cares. And so our engagement with our staff is huge. So I keep saying embracing new automation possibilities as we go. As far as AI goes, I don't think there's any doubt. Like a lot of industries, AI is going to play a major part. I'm not sure that it's going to play a major part in producing food products. I think it'll be the intelligence into the market or the simplification of the logistics and coordination more than it's going to change that. at least in the short order.
Brent, this has been a fantastic conversation. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate your product. And, I'll have to send you a link to my Juicy Lucy episode on my Last Request Barbecue show, because I tried mostly in vain to get that cheese inside the burger and cooked up. Anyway, it's a good failure anyway.
Well, we're going to have to send you some of our stuffed burgers with cheese. If there's a stuffed burger in the market, we make it. So go hunt those ones out in the retail. You'll find it.
I'm going to study it and see how you did it. I'm going to back out the technology and figure it out. Look out. I'm coming. Brent, on behalf of Sylvain and I, what a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us on The Food Professor. Congratulations to you, to your people on 60 years of success, and wish you continued at least another 360 years more.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys' time and the opportunity to just reach out to consumers out there and understand a little bit more about our industry and how come Canada's making a big wave in that way. It's a big part of who we are as a country.
Go Canada. Absolutely. Thank you, Brent.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Let's talk about lobsters and lobster pain. Article in the CBC, of course, about do lobsters feel pain? I noted there was a debate, and one of your colleagues at the University of Dalhousie said, listen, there is no research that says lobsters or insects feel pain in the way we think, but many are saying, I think it was Britain that is starting to ban live boiling of lobsters. There's a movement. What do you make of this?
Switzerland.
I have to say, I've never been wildly comfortable throwing lobsters into a boiling pot of water. I love lobster, but maybe I'm squeamish about them all kind of, the claws go up. Maybe, so now I just take a knife and pop it through the head, clean and quick. How do you cook your lobsters?
Is that how you do it? Really?
Yeah, that's how I do it.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, how many things do you kill in your own kitchen?
It's true. Very few.
Very few. But and we all been to the grocery store. We've seen those tanks filled with lobsters and things like that. And we can actually buy one and kill it at home.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing really you can kill at home.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, so
it's true.
that you're going to eat. And so I'd say that really, I think right now you're seeing many countries that don't have a lobster industry moving on this for a variety of different reasons. I'm not entirely convinced that the science is there, and I agree with my colleague from Dal. I mean, there's no clear scientific evidence that the animal actually suffers being boiled. But there are ways you can actually make it fall asleep in vapor, in steam. There are different ways you can actually, a lot of people think the only way to actually eat a lobster is to boil it. You can actually steam it as well. And I heard it's less painful if there is any pain at all. And
it's less dramatic anyway. It's a little less dramatic.
Yeah, because I've actually eaten lobster at my neighbors in Halifax, and I don't see. I've never seen a neighbor or a friend boil lobster ever. So
let's talk about butter. Two butter stories. I know how you love butter and dairy stories. There's a new butter bar.
By the way, my butter right here in the United States is very soft.
Oh, really?
And it was 7 degrees this morning.
Perhaps. So you have to get your Nutella from a chocolate bar. There's a new butter bar opening up in Mississauga, actually not too far from me. We're going to have to go next time you're in town. So an entire store dedicated to flavored butters. What do you think of that?
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's hello cholesterol.
Well,
so
now
have you been?
I have not.
It's close to where you live.
It's very close. It's opening. I'm not sure it's open yet, but I'm going to go see. Actually, it's not too far from Girth, our cheesemonger, who will see at Cial, who's the master cheese judge for their cheese competition. Girth has got a nice cheese store not too far from the butter bar, so it's a 1-2. I like a good combo.
I haven't never heard a Canadian say that. Generally speaking, butter in Canada is very good. I mean, we have a problem. Some butters are very good in Canada, but you have to pay a lot. You have to pay a huge premium. So why not go to a specialty store that specializes in selling butter? I'm sure that in that store, they don't sell crap. They sell good stuff.
Well, I have another way to get some amazing butter. have you followed or seen this new TikTok trend, running to churn butter? So they have a bunch of people who put a dairy cream in a bag and then run, and apparently past 5 kilometers, it starts to get thick, and by the end of 10 kilometers, you are making butter. And so there's these TikToks.
Like that, well, wait a second here. You put your cream in the bag, like on your belt or something?
Yes.
And it shakes. As you run, it shakes.
And churns it into butter, and then they've got TikToks with these runners who then stop and have a piece of bread with their butter on it that they made as they ran.
Oh my God.
TikTok, right? So I want to dedicate this episode to a real icon in the restaurant industry. Farewell to a Canadian legend. Edward Pottinger passed away, and he was the founder of The Real Jerk, which is, if you lived in Toronto or passed through Toronto, it was, I had many, many great meals at The Real Jerk in the various locations, and it was a fantastic Jamaican. It was a Jamaican restaurant when early days, and not a lot of places were serving Jamaican food, or it wasn't wildly popular, and it was always an amazing place that was a pile of fun. He passed away last week. I dedicate our episode to Edward Pottinger, and a great legend in the Canadian restaurant industry.
Rest in peace.
All right, well, that's our episode. I'm Michael LeBlanc, media entrepreneur, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.